Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Duke just stinks. I told you last week. It came true on Tuesday night. Illinois, 15-point win in a game that frankly wasn't that close. But the story isn't about the game because I talked about it on Wednesday's show. The story today is what happened after the game where Coach K, completely out of left field, just came out with this rant about how we need to cancel college basketball season. And so I'll get into the details. I'll get into all of it. But let me just say right off the top, before I get into anything, it's preposterous. It makes no sense. Coach K is doing the typical Coach K. I want it my way because I have ruled my kingdom in Durham for the last 40 years, and I expect everyone to fall in line. It's preposterous, so let's get into it. So again, all this happened late Tuesday night into Wednesday. Most of you, including me, I'm sure probably didn't even see it until Wednesday morning. But essentially, Coach K was asked about the state of college basketball. It's obviously, look, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. It's not a great time. Games are being canceled. Programs are being shut down. In some cases, programs are being shut down a second or third time. My alma mater, UConn, has been shut down for a second time over the last week. NC State, you go on and on and on down the list. Quite a few programs are being shut down. And so Coach K was asked about the status of things. And what he basically said was, we need to postpone the season. What he said was, we are in the middle of the worst of it. The numbers continue to go up, which is a fact. I will not argue Coach K on that. And not only are the numbers continuing to go up, but the CDC is basically telling everybody, do not travel. And if you go ahead and travel, you shouldn't be. And so Coach K is basically like, why are we playing all these out-of-conference games? Why are we having teams travel all over the country when literally the people at the highest levels of the government are telling us we should not be traveling right now? I think to extrapolate on Coach K's point, he basically said, look, there is a vaccine in the works. We're getting there. We're close. And he used some numbers. I don't know if they're 100% accurate or not, but basically he believes that by the end of this month, millions of people will have been vaccinated, specifically frontline workers. And then we're talking, a month to 6 weeks, there's the possibility that tens of millions, if not 100 million people, in Coach K's words, have the potential to be vaccinated in the very near future. And so basically what he is saying is, like, let's just push back the season. Let's just wait until everybody can get vaccinated. There's no need to rush this. Let's wait. Let's do this. Whatever. You get the point. Coach K basically doesn't want to coach in this environment. And I'll say this. First of all, before we get into the nuance of it, I do want to actually defend Coach K on one thing, and that is very simply this. A lot of people, when this news came out, when this story came out, when this quote came out, they kind of said, well, typical Coach K. Very clear that his team stinks and he doesn't want to coach and he doesn't want to be involved and he wants nothing to do with it and he's looking for a get-out-of-jail-free card. And I will say, in defense of those people, I think that is a fair thing to think. I mean, listen, you can defend Coach K all you want. 1995, he was headed towards the worst season of his career. He opts to have back surgery in the middle of the season. That record is expunged from his record. It went on a guy named Pete Gaudette's record. And next thing you know, Pete Gaudette is fired and never heard from again. A lot of people thought that because Duke stinks, they're 2-2 with 2 home losses to Michigan State and Illinois, that this is why Coach K came out and said it. I don't blame people for saying that, but I will defend Coach K on this. I do not believe that he is saying this because he truly just wants to get out of this season because he knows his team stinks. Is it a possibility? I do think it's a possibility. But I also think if you've listened to this show, while I have been critical of certain things and moments in time, specifically Florida State football, I've also understood that there's nuance to all of this stuff, Michigan football, for example, and I do believe that Coach K is coming at this from what I believe he thinks is a good place. And why I say that is very simply this. If you go through the last 6 months or so of Coach K's kind of quote-unquote track record with this virus, you will tell that he does take this virus very seriously, and that basically I think he's very concerned, and we can get into why in a second, but just go back and look at his actions over the last 6 months, and if you do that, the quotes that he put out on Tuesday night are very much in line with that. First of all, people probably won't remember this, but most athletes were allowed to come back to campus, according to the NCAA, as early as June 1st. Now, basketball, it wasn't exactly June 1st, but most of these programs had their athletes back on campus sometime in late June, early August. When I'm talking about basketball, football, a lot of the football programs had them back June 1. But basketball, July 1, July 15th, basically everybody brought their kids back at around that time. Coach K didn't bring his kids back until basically the end of the summer when the school year started right around Labor Day. His kind of thought was they're safer home, they're safer away from our facility, they can't get into our facility, we can't coach them, we can't practice with them, so there's no reason to basically have them here on campus. That's Coach K's opinion. We can agree, we can disagree. He is allowed to run his program how he feels fit, but the bottom line remains that Duke was actually one of the last programs in college basketball to bring their players back. On top of that, as proof that Coach K probably feels a little bit differently about this virus than a lot of other people. If you'll remember, and I know you'll remember this one, remember the story where there was like a moment in time where somebody basically pushed for this narrative of, let's get all 346 teams in college basketball into the NCAA tournament. Like, you remember that, right? I talked about it on this show. It was absurd then. It basically got shot down in like 0.5 seconds. Like, the leaders of the NCAA were like, no, we're not doing this. Well, if you remember, that narrative came out of the ACC offices with the ACC basically saying like, dude, we don't want to play out of conference games. We don't want to travel. We don't want to bring other teams into our facilities that aren't testing at the same level we are. So let's eliminate out-of-conference games. Let's play an NCAA tournament with everybody, and then we could say that we had a fair, balanced season that had equity for everybody. Everybody had a chance to win. Well, guess where that idea came from? Like I said, the ACC offices. Guess who was behind it, number one? Coach K. So when you look at Coach K's track record, we really now have a 6-month sample size that he is, in his mind, going above and beyond and doing what he believes is necessary. We can agree, we can disagree. He is entitled to his opinion. I am not going to criticize him for voicing his opinion. I would also say, also in his defense, and I'm defending Coach K a lot, by the way. I've never defended Coach K this much. He is 73 years old. I do think that he is looking out for his personal well-being, and I'm not going to criticize him for that. I know that I look at this virus a lot differently at 35-ish. I'm not going to give away my age. A man never tells his age. But, I'm in my early to mid-30s. I look at this virus a lot differently than Coach K does at 73 years old. I look at this virus a lot differently than my parents do, who are both in their, hate to tell your age, mom and dad, but, they're somewhere in their 60s, maybe early 60s, maybe mid-60s, maybe late. We look at the virus differently. And so Coach K saying that he is worried, I understand it. And I do understand that as a 73-year-old, he has a different perspective than everybody else. But with all that said, let me very simply say this. Coach K, don't ruin it for the rest of us. And as a matter of fact, that was my frustration with this story, was that Coach K is essentially, as I said earlier in the show, trying to come down from his throne in Durham and force his will on the rest of college basketball. No different than the 346-team NCAA tournament. Coach K is literally trying to get this season postponed. And oh, by the way, I like this guy, but he has all his lackeys in the media saying the same. Dick Vitale said essentially the same thing on Wednesday afternoon. Jay Billis has been spitting this nonsense on every chance that he gets in these broadcasts. And while I respect their opinions, while everyone is entitled to their opinion, it's absolutely preposterous. Here's why. First of all, and this might be the most important simplistic reason, one, Coach K, if you don't want to coach, just don't coach. Like, it's not that hard. We have this thing called opt-outs. Don't know if you watch ESPN, but every 10 seconds, somebody is opting out of the college football season. Eric Gilbert at LSU, their best player, just opted out. A week before, Terrace Marshall, LSU's best player, just opted out. I could go team by team, player by player. We have opt-outs every day. I'll take it a step further. We've had coaches opt out. Chicago State's head coach in basketball opted out the day before the season. Oh, by the way, we've had entire conferences opt out. The Ivy League is not playing basketball this year. They completely opted out of their season. And again, it's not my place to criticize how the Ivy League is running the Ivy League. But for the rest of us, we want some basketball. We want to play. And so if Coach K does not want to play, If Coach K does not want to participate, then that's fine. Sit this one out. Put out a press release. Say, I'm 73 years old. I love this game. I love this school. I love this university. I do not feel safe getting on a chartered plane to go play whomever. And oh, by the way, for all his whining, Duke hasn't left Durham since the season started. They haven't played a single road game yet. They will against Notre Dame a few weeks in conference play to open up ACC play on the road. But if you don't want to participate, we get it. People are opting out left and right. There's nothing wrong with that. And will you take heat for maybe a day or two? Maybe. But if you feel like that's what's right for you, then opt out, Coach K. You don't have to participate. Second of all, this idea about flying all over the country to play non-conference games. Does anyone look at the calendar besides me? It's December 10th. We're going to be done with out-of-conference games in about 30 seconds. Out-of-conference games are going to be a thing of the past by no later than Christmas, and really even before that. A lot of conferences are starting this weekend. Baylor's playing Texas in the Big 12. The Big East is opening this weekend. So we have conference games. We can bus. We can be safer. We can be more responsible. By the way, Kentucky bussed to the Georgia Tech game in Atlanta last weekend. That's a 6-hour bus ride. They're trying to be responsible. They're trying to be safe. Creighton bus to the Kansas game on Tuesday in Lawrence. That's a 3-hour bus ride. They're trying to be safe. Coach K, we're doing everything we can to be as safe as we can. But it doesn't mean that we should shut down the sport. And the problem that bothers me on the entire discourse about the conversation about shutting down college basketball, it doesn't even make sense, okay? If you want to argue there's too much travel, there's too much this, there's too much that, well, first of all, we're going to regional games. We're going to conference play here in a couple weeks. But also, I also think that we have to look at the bigger picture, the broader picture. One, you guys know where I stand on shutting the world down for the sake of shutting the world down. I don't believe we should do it, and I don't believe we should punish these players who want to play. Now, I heard Jay Billis say, on ESPN the other night, and Jay Billis is a really smart guy. This isn't a criticism of him, but he basically said, well, if the players were playing in a lightning storm outside, we wouldn't ask them if they wanted to play. We would just pull them off the court. Yeah, Jay Billis, I think a random lightning storm on a Wednesday afternoon is a lot different than a pandemic. And so what frustrates me about this situation is what's really frustrated me about the discourse of this entire conversation dating back to, frankly, last March, April, May. There can be two sides to a conversation. We can say, hey, we have to be careful. We have to keep our players safe. We can be responsible. We can do the things needed to do to play games, and we can be responsible without canceling the season. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be, if we play the season, we're heathens and barbarians that don't have a consideration for human life. If we do play the season, if we don't play the season, then we're looking out for the player's best interest. That's a crock of BS. And you know why? I'll tell you why. Because as I've told you for 6 months, the safest first of all, there's two things. There's the players. If we're worried about the players, if this is what it's about, if it's really about the players, if it's not about Coach K, if it's not about Jay Billis, if it's not about his personal opinion, if it really is about the players, well, two things. First of all, and I've said this since June, the safest place these players can be is on a college campus. Now, it's not going to 100% absolve them of potentially catching the virus. Guess what? Nothing will. Louisville basketball was in a bubble last week. They are currently shut down because of the coronavirus. UConn basketball was in the Mohegan Sun bubble last week. They are currently shut down because of the coronavirus. So there is nowhere a human being can go on planet Earth that is going to keep them 100% safe from the coronavirus. It doesn't exist. That place does not exist. It is not a real place. But the safest place they can be is playing college sports where for the millionth time they are being monitored by the best doctors, they are being tested every day, they are under constant supervision, and if they do test positive, they are getting the best treatment possible. So if it's really about the players, if it's really about their safety, guess what? Safest place they can be is playing. You send them home, it's the same conversation that I've had over the last 5-6 months. Guess what? Not playing basketball doesn't mean that you're not going to be exposed to the virus. As a matter of fact, it's less safe because now you're living with mom and dad. You're living with grandma and grandpa. Grandpa's living up in the attic. Grandma's living in the basement. Maybe you have a brother or sister with an immune problem. The safest place these guys can be is with their teams, and not playing basketball doesn't mean that you will not catch the virus. Secondly, and I think this is the most important part that I haven't heard anybody talk about, there's been a buzzword in sports, in college sports and professional sports, really over the last, I think, probably 2 or 3 years that everybody loves to throw out: mental health. And to be abundantly clear, I want to make this explicitly clear. Mental health is a real thing. Mental health well-being is a real thing, and I take that very seriously. My wife is a mental health expert. My sister-in-law works in the mental health space. My wife does. My sister does. No one understands the importance of mental health more than I do. My wife, my sister-in-law, my sister, they can't tell me everything that goes on in their job, but I can see the weight of what they do every time they walk in the door. And so I understand the value and the importance of mental health. Well, guess what? If you really care about mental health the way that you say you do, because that's the buzzword, everyone says they care about mental health. Well, guess what? The best thing you can do for these players' mental health is to let them play. And I know what some people say, oh, the start and stop nature of the season, it's unfair to these players. I agree. I wish we never had to cancel a game. I wish Baylor didn't fly all the way to Indianapolis to have the game called off against Gonzaga 10 minutes before tip-off. But you know what's even worse than that? Having no basketball at all. And this is the part that I don't hear anybody talk about, and it's so frustrating because all these losers on Twitter talk about, oh, mental health this, mental health that. Well, yeah, it's really important. But you know when it's really important? At a time like now, when these players have nothing else. And I heard Dana Altman, the head coach at Oregon, say this, and I give him so much credit because he's the only one that said it. He was asked about transfers and sit-outs, and he said, I think every player should get a waiver this year because the mental health of these guys is at an all-time low. All they have is basketball right now. And so when you're talking about postponing the season, you have to put yourself in the player's shoes. These guys literally have nothing else besides basketball right now. They're on an empty campus. Most campuses are closed at this point of the year. They can't go to bars. They can't go to parties. They can't hang out even with their own teammates. You guys listen to this podcast. I had on Eric Musselman in the fall. I had on Rick Barnes in the fall. Rick Barnes talked about the best place in the world is our locker room. And our guys can't hang out there now. Our doctors won't let them. So what's happening is these players are going home, many of them to their own apartments. They're not allowed to socialize with their friends. They're not allowed to socialize on campus. And all they have, the only time that they get to feel normal for 2 minutes, for 2 hours a day, is when they play basketball. When they go on the road, many of them have their own hotel rooms. I thought it was interesting. Mark Few, when he's talking about all Gonzaga's protocols, he said for the first time ever, our players are getting their own hotel rooms because we don't want them staying together and spreading the virus potentially amongst each other. You look at other circumstances. How about this? The Mohegan Sun bubble a few weeks ago. Jay Wright was saying that once they got into the bubble, if the players or coaches wanted to leave their room, they had to call security and have a security guard come and personally escort them. They were not allowed to leave their room once they went back. I'm not going to sit here and say it's this or it's that or it's prison or it's this, but it sucks. And all they have is basketball. And so if we're talking about postponing the season and we're talking about really caring about players' mental health, then what you're really saying is you don't care about the players' mental health because all they have is basketball going forward. And to be abundantly clear for the last time, I am not saying that we can't be cautious. I am not saying that I don't love the fact that Kentucky took a bus to play Georgia Tech. Kentucky's being as cautious as they can be. Players are wearing monitors everywhere they go to make sure they're not within close contact of anybody else. I love the fact that Gonzaga is going above and beyond. 2 buses to the arena, 2 planes when they fly out, everybody getting their hotel room. But at some point, if you care about the players' physical health, if you care about their parents, their brothers, their sisters' physical health, and you care about the players' mental health, you got to let them play. So Dickie V, quiet down. Jay Billis, you talk to these coaches, have some perspective, share both sides. Stop sharing one side, stop sharing your own opinion. Look at both sides of this, and I'm sorry that I'm yelling, but I'm so fired up because I can't believe that 6 months into this thing, 9 months into this thing, we're having the same conversations. We can be responsible. We can worry about players' health. We can do everything we can to keep them safe, but it doesn't mean we have to shut down the world. We have to move forward. We have to move forward as a sport. We have to move forward as a society, and it just drives me ballistic that you have somebody like Coach K with the platform that he does trying to bring down the whole sport with him. Coach K, you don't want to coach, that's fine. I respect your opinion, but respect everybody else's. People want to play, the kids want to play, coaches want to coach, and if you don't want to be part of this, that's fine, but don't bring everybody else down with you.